Friends, you are listening to episode 492 of the Juicebox Podcast, and today my guest is Grace. Grace has had type 1 diabetes for quite some time, and today she does a real kindness. She tells her story, but while she's doing so, her blood sugar gets low, and we continue to record as she treats, responds, and rebounds from the low blood sugar. You're going to get to hear the whole thing. It's incredibly interesting. Grace, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I just want to say one more time, because when we were done talking, Grace was like, I'm afraid that would be boring, or I didn't. It's incredibly interesting, and it's a kindness for Grace to share this with us. So enjoy the conversation, learn something from the low blood sugar, and then have a great day. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. The show is also sponsored by the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, and you can learn more and get started at dexcom.com/juicebox.
I'm Grace, and I live in the North Country of Wyoming.
Ooh, that sounds pretty. Why do I think that sounds pretty? Because I've been watching TV shows that take place in Wyoming during this entire COVID-19 thing.
I heard your interview with someone talking about that. There was a younger man that you interviewed a while back. I listened to your podcast, and he's from Landers, I think.
Sure.
Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, I've been watching. I've power watched Yellowstone. So that's
yes.
I very much enjoyed. I also just got done watching Longmire on Netflix. I seem to be in a modern Western phase, and so I just finished. I finished Longmire on Netflix, and now I've jumped to Justified, which is available right now on Hulu. Yeah, I seem to be in some sort of a modern Western phase, and Wyoming comes up a lot in all of them, except for Justified, which is more like Kentucky, I think. That's not the point. The point is, Grace, it sounds remote and lovely where you live, and I find that appealing a little bit. But you're not there right now. You're in California, you said.
Yes, I'm just not a big city, lots of traffic kind of person. I don't. And although it's kind of on the outskirts of the major town, traffic where my mother resides, it is annoying for some little country girl like myself. And it's just challenging to drive and deal with, the beep beep and the honk honk, and I'm going to cut you off and get in your lane, and you need, I'm just like, have a nice day.
You're not used to driving on an Indianapolis 500 speedway, right?
No, there was a time in the day when I did do that, but I've just
not up for it anymore.
Myself from most of those stresses.
So tell me a little bit about how old were you when you were diagnosed?
I just turned 8.
You were 8 years old. How old are you now?
Old enough to know better, but too young to care about it.
All right, I'll leave that at that for a second. But how old is your mom?
No, I'll tell you. I'll be 50.
Okay.
I'll be 59 in a couple of weeks.
Okay, all right. So you're 59. So you've had type 1 for 51 years.
Correct.
Wow. And how old's your mom?
80 something. It changes with you.
When you
it changes. Yeah, she's 83. She's 83.
No kidding. Wow. And you're somewhere where she is now helping her?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, how did you, I have to ask first, I guess, how you found the podcast, because you fall outside of my age demographic a little bit for listeners.
Yeah, I know that. Isn't that fun? Let's see. How did I find you? Oh, I just been looking. I connected my phone to listening to subjects of interest, right? And somehow, I think I found you on Instagram first.
Wow. Okay.
And that's how I found you. And then I started squinting to read and look, and I went, oh, I just need to go on my laptop and see if I can make this work more easily for myself. And I found it, and then I connected your podcast, listening it to my phone, because I'll run around the house doing household stupid stuff, and set the phone in a decent location and just listen. And sometimes I'll actually sit down and listen to your podcast, and I found them informative, and yet not so much, because some of it's new on the individuals and how they went about, learning to manage. And because I was raised in a military home, I was just handed the insulin, and I was not allowed to leave the hospital until I was giving my own injections, and this is how you manage it, and this is how you take care of it, and this is what you have to do. It's your disease, you take care of it at the age of 8. And so it was really different for me than what I'm hearing these protective parents and different types of, there's a few out there that are a little more liberal with their kids, and but when they're diagnosed at 2, then that doesn't work real well. So, I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I just find it interesting, the different ways that people are learning about how to manage, take care of it.
So what do you find, or how do you find the more like nuts and bolts part of the conversations, the management stuff? Is it nearly the way you do it, or how? Like when we talk about pre-bolusing and
I'm learning that there are times when I do need to pre-bolus, and there are times when I absolutely don't.
Okay. For
myself, as an individual with 51 years of type 1 diabetes, from the old glass syringes to vials of long-acting insulin that never worked for me, put me into shock or DKA. I was all over the map for a very long period of time until I went to pumping. So there are times when I do need to pre-bolus a little bit. Being bold with insulin was something I've always done.
You were just always being aggressive. Yeah. Well, so there's a lot here that I'm super interested in. I'm glad you're on. Do you wear a glucose monitor now?
I do. Yes.
Which one do you have?
I just moved to the Dexcom 6 about 60 days ago. Oh, wow. I was on the Libre, and it was just giving me too many low blood sugar readings compared to finger sticks. So
moved to Dexcom.
Working it out.
Gotcha. So now that you have a CGM on that you can see continuously, where does your blood sugar sit stable, or does it jump around all the time?
Yeah, it's still it vacillates to a certain degree. It depends on my activity. There's 3 things that manage me. That's activity, medication, and food, right?
Okay.
However, I can go for a 45-minute walk, and I maintain a certain level. I'll stay at 116 to 110, and then 20 minutes after my walk, I bottom out at like 35. So
no kidding. Okay. So, all right, what insulin are you using?
I'm just using Novolog.
Novolog in a pump, and you have
Correct.
a CGM. Oh, okay. May I ask your current A1C-ish? You don't have to tell me exactly.
I believe it was a 5.9.
Okay. Lifetime. Where were you keeping it in your 40s, for example, a decade ago or more?
A little higher. I was in this mid 7s. When that was I've been on a pump for 17 years.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go on one because they were huge and bulky.
Right.
originally on. They were just like, oh my gosh, cumbersome. And I'm never going on that. For 8 years, the greatest endocrinologist I ever had, which I still love and would see him if, I needed to. It's just he's not geographically desirable because he's in California and I'm in, Wyoming. But he suggested it. And he said, well, I'm glad you waited until the technology got better. And I said, well, I think it's time. And I was in the 15s and 16s with my A1C at that point.
And back then you're using just some sort of a fast acting insulin, some sort of a slow acting insulin, or were you like MPH and R or an R like cloudy?
Yeah. I was using regular insulin and a single to double. We tried single dose of NPH. We tried double dose of NPH. And for some reason, because it took them 6 months to diagnose me.
Okay.
We were in transition in the military life that I grew up in, transporting, relocating. I've been to 35 different schools, probably moved 1,450 times in my entire lifetime.
Was your dad a general?
You broke up a little bit there. What did you say?
I said, was your father a general?
No, no, but we did relocate frequently, and it was a lot to do with family dynamics. I'm the youngest of three.
Okay.
The only one that's ever had, any medical problems, and we just lost my sister. She passed away unexpectedly, so that's why I'm here. I'm here to help, my mother manage different things in her life.
And, I'm sorry. Your sister passed recently, and she had been helping your mother.
Yes, somewhat. Mom is very stubborn, very independent, and I'm going to do it myself. And we only recently convinced her that she didn't need to be driving anymore.
She's out going for a ride in California. Well, so this is really something, because you lived and managed your diabetes in a completely different technological time, and now you're as modern as you could possibly be right now with your care, and are you having a lot of lows that are keeping your A1C lower? Like, are you under 50?
Probably a few more than desirable, but I took all my devices. I took my PDM and my controller into the doctor's office while I was at the blood lab, and that's in Colorado, and dropped it off while they downloaded and uploaded, and then I went back to get it. And so he was like, yeah, congratulations. He says, looks like he says, I like your current settings, because I too have that stubbornness. I'm going to do it myself, and you can just, write the prescription, please. Right. Because, it's like he asked me one time, I told him about, your podcast. And he says, you're not becoming bold with insulin, are you? And we just laughed because, come on. Well, all right. So the military doctor that once they finally diagnosed me, he said, he says, don't deprive her of any, food values or going to a birthday party or whatever. He said, just give her a little more regular insulin. Mm-hmm. So that was how we managed, 50 years ago. Why should that change now? Right.
Are you telling me the doctor, when you told the doctor about the podcast, he was aware of it?
Correct.
Oh, I want to take a moment to thank all the people who tell their endocrinologists about the podcast. Thank you. That's really crazy. This was in Colorado?
Correct.
Nice. I'm huge in Colorado. Utah, too, in case you're wondering.
I noticed that, you're pretty international, my friend. You just really got it going on.
Oh, it's working out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really thrilled that you liked the podcast, because it says a lot to me that someone who's lived through many different iterations of type 1 diabetes, and who, and I don't mean this insultingly, obviously, but you're on the other side of listening to podcasts in general, age-wise, that you found it and that you enjoy it means a lot to me. It really does. That's a very good sign to me about the show, that you specifically can listen to it, find something interesting or helpful about it is really is wonderful. I'm so happy that we're talking today. I'd love to know a little bit about, I mean, have you been married through your life? Do you have children? Like, what's a little bit of your background?
Okay, so I did the married thing once, and we're no longer married. I was unable to have children, and I've been a parent. I, I semi-adopted in an open adoption 4 boys. So
Okay.
they're a major part of my life. So I'm theirs, if you want to know the truth. I'm their go-to girl. Things are going habeas corpus with other relationships in their life. And, we talk about it and I listen to them. And I worked with exceptional children for 20 years. And so that's kind of my background with that. The marriage didn't work out because I didn't like getting beat up and tossed around, and it was just not a good situation, and I don't tolerate that very well.
Of course. Well, that's good for you. What may I ask, like, in what part of your life were you married? At what age were you?
I got married at 43.
Look at you. You are a trailblazer in a lot of different ways. And this guy was a jackass, and you were like, that's when I'm not doing this.
Well, yeah. I waited and I let him make that decision so that the financial responsibility would fall into his lap.
Grace, you waited him out for money reasons. You are a tough lady.
Not really.
No?
I'm fragile, but I don't want to admit it,
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry. That's terrible that anybody would lay their hands on you like that.
Well, he did it in such a way that, when you are of his type, government official, let's just put it that way, he could get away with things that weren't obvious.
Okay. So he was the type of person who nobody would have thought that of or would have gone after had they thought it. So he had a little autonomy to hurt you without any repercussions.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, it took me a while to figure out that, I was not in a good enough situation. But the funny thing is that, my father basically raised me. My mom was, had raised her 2 older kids and was deeply and heavily involved in their life. And she had returned to school to get her medical license finished up. And my dad was getting ready to retire from the military. So he raised me for the most part. And be that as it may, I've always enjoyed guns and outdoors and horses and, riding the reins with, motorcycles and dogs. And so it was just like, and then, of course, I do know how to don the dress in the tins to go to a banquet or whatever. Yeah. So when I met this gentleman, we met and we talked for hours on the internet. And finally he revealed to me what he did and who he was, and had to have my background check. He had to have me background checks just to date me. So that made I was like, interesting. And when I told my dad, I said, I must have done something right because I passed with flying colors, but it was another manipulation that I wasn't really aware of at the time.
Making you feel important and
exactly. Yes, wow. Exactly.
Grace, I'll tell you, I've recorded like 500 of these, and still people surprise me all the time with stories that I've just never heard before. That's going to be one of them. How long were you with him before you got out?
From dating to, let's see, 13 years.
Oh my gosh. Well,
yeah, 13 years.
How did you handle, like, with all that going on, did diabetes come into the picture, or was he basically unaware of it?
Oh yes. I've been open about my diabetes because I am, my blood sugar shifts, like it's shifting now, and I can feel it. Sometimes I don't feel it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'm a little too bold with insulin. So I don't think I would ever be a candidate for the Horizon or the Loop system, because I manipulate my dosage according to what's going on with me.
Well, do you think
constantly?
Okay. Well, so I'm sorry. So I have two questions now, because I used the wrong word before. But what I meant was, while you were married, did you just manage your diabetes on your own? He was not involved in it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And he would, throw temper tantrums because, he didn't understand why I would be taking some insulin when, I had drank 40 ounces of juice to come up from a low blood, because the gastroparesis, right? So that's why.
Okay.
It takes a while for me to respond to getting my blood sugar back up if it drops.
So you have gastroparesis.
Severely.
You have gastroparesis too. And I mean, honestly, like, I'm thrilled that you found all the technology you found, but if you had A1Cs in the double digits through a larger portion of your life, that's what I was going to ask you. Have you had any repercussions of it? So gastroparesis is one. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I've had multiple eye surgeries, hand surgeries, that, with the triggering fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I have neuropathy in my feet.
Okay.
Pretty severely. At times, I get rested. I take Tylenol for the discomfort, and once in a while a gabapentin, but I'm not fond of that because it just makes me so, what's the word I want? Puts me into la la land, and I don't care for the double vision, or the side effects are worse than the relief that it semi helps with.
I have to you had a little bit of noise on your end, so I didn't hear the second medication that you're saying you don't like to take. What was it?
It's called gabapentin.
Gabapentin.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's a neurological. It's for pain, and it supposedly is to help neuropathy.
I see it here. Anticonvulsant and nerve pain medication. It can treat seizures and pain caused by shingles. And apparently gives you double vision and doesn't make you feel good too. Well,
it makes you groggy and loopy. It does me. Some people, I mean, they take it in the by handfuls, and it's perfectly fine.
No kidding. Oh, I see. They use this for. It's got a lot of uses: restless leg, fibromyalgia. They use it for a lot of different things. Sciatica. Okay, sorry. I went down a little rabbit hole there on the internet. I got a little lost for a second. All right. So what is it like when you've lived your life with A1Cs that are higher, and then all of a sudden you've got this pump, and then now more recently you have a glucose monitor? Is it like, how do you feel physically, first of all? Do you feel any differently than you have in the past?
Yeah, I physically still feel pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
For someone that's had it as long as I have and been through, the traumas and the changes of control versus I feel more in control of it than I have ever.
That's excellent.
With the CGM and I don't know if it's okay to say. I'm pretty sure it's all right to let you know that I am using the Omnipod dash system.
Cool. No, I heard you say PDM earlier, so I figured you were using Omnipod. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't been using it all that long. I've only been on the Omnipod dash for a couple of years. But when you are used to wearing, the tubing,
mm-hmm.
and you have enough accidents between, it getting cut or caught on something, you're not aware of it, and it's disconnected, and you all of a sudden you just fall out, and they're lifting you into an ambulance, and you come to, and it's like, what happened? And like, it looks like your tubing got cut. So that gets to be too dangerous for somebody that remains active.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As myself. I'm not as active as I would like to be or once was, but I'm not ready to give up yet. It's just not there.
Okay. You don't sound like somebody's going to give up to me, but I take your point, and it's funny. Like, when I do the ads, I'll say sometimes like, you don't get your tubing caught on a doorknob and get your site ripped out, but you're even saying that can happen, and you just won't know it happened. And then
I had it happen a couple of different times in different ways, but wow.
Yeah, that's not good, because now suddenly you do not have any insulin, and you think you do, and I guess that quickly escalates to very high blood sugars. I was talking with somebody yesterday who had a malfunction with their pump, and they said, like, what'll happen if I just don't take insulin until I get the new pump tomorrow? And I was like, you'll probably be dead. Like, you can't not have insulin. I'm always fascinated by how little sometimes people understand that insulin they're getting, if it's slow acting through injection, is the thing keeping them going. Like the minute you take it away, it's bad news. But I never thought of it that way. But you lived in a different time with diabetes. That really is interesting.
We had to boil my glass syringes. Right, mm-hmm. They had the disposable needle caps that were like 10-penny nails to a 8-year-old child. I was like, no.
Little big. Those needles weren't as fine as those little ones are now, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. No. Oh, absolutely not. And, the only way that they could test my blood was to draw intravenously. And that was even more traumatic for me. It was like, my dad had to just sit me in his lap and wrap his legs and arms around me while someone else held my arm out for them to draw it. And I'm still, I hate that. I hate it.
Blood draw in general just doesn't work for you because of all the times when you were younger.
And I'm scarred. I mean, physically there's scars on my arms from, them drawing my blood.
Yeah.
So, military hospitals were not up to date.
Right. And you were probably just, and it's a kid of someone, and you have diabetes, and I haven't even done the math, but 50 years ago, 1970-ish, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, about it. Yeah. When you were diagnosed, maybe 1969?
69. Yeah, it was in March of 1969. I remember it like it was yesterday.
No kidding.
Because I was sick. I had been sick. Well, we had relocated from the east to the west, literally. And it was, I don't know if you're familiar with, I got to treat for a little bit low here.
Don't do your thing. Can we take a U-turn for a second? What number are you treating at?
It's dropping rapidly. I'm at 70. Let's see, what did it say? It said 80. I knew it said 71. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and have a little juice here. Yeah. The puppy already, he starts, good boy.
Grace, you have a dog there?
Way ahead of time.
I was going to say, Grace, you have a dog there with you, or you're getting low and confused and you're talking to yourself? Which is going on?
A little bit of both at the moment.
Yeah, it's all right. Take your time. Seriously, take your time. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. The first time I had ever heard about the Dexcom was years and years ago. Arden's nurse practitioner told us that there was this device that you could see your blood sugar in real time on. and it was called a Dexcom. She said, "Are you going to get a Dexcom?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is." So she explained to me that she had a kid in the practice who was super excited to get a Dexcom so that they could learn how to eat their favorite snack. This thing that they had struggled with constantly with a spike. And they thought that by seeing their blood sugar, they might be able to make better decisions with insulin. And what a fun thing to think back on, back when that was just like an idea in someone's head. Like, maybe if you could see it, it would be easier. Oh, what an understatement, huh? Well, today, many years later, I can tell you that absolutely turned out to be 100% true, and a lot more, actually. So the Dexcom G6 allows you to see your blood sugar in real time, not just the number, but the speed and direction. And this information is invaluable. It helps me every day to make amazing decisions about Arden's care. It could help you too, I think. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Alerts where you want them. You want to be alarmed when you go below 90, you can do that. You don't want it to happen until you're below 80, you can do that. 70, it's up to you. You want to hear a rise alert? I like mine at 120. On Arden's phone, it's 130. These distinctions are yours to make. And you can decide who, if anyone, you want to share your data with. So Arden's data is shared with me and my wife, but it could also be shared with up to 8 more people, right? So Arden can see it, plus 10 more people of her choosing. Now, if you're an adult, maybe that's your husband or your mother. If it's for your child, it could be anybody. Daycare provider, school nurse, it's completely up to you. Choice is yours. Dexcom.com/juicebox. I'll tell you this, these results are ours and yours may vary, but my daughter has 0 diet restrictions. She eats a fairly classic American diet, and her A1C has been in the 5s for 7 years. I think a lot of that has to do with being able to see the data, being able to see where her blood sugar is going and how fast it's getting there. I hope you check it out. Dexcom.com/juicebox. There's links in the show notes to that and to all of the sponsors. You can also find those links at juiceboxpodcast.com.
Well, he moved himself from one position to the next and came and lay next to me by my feet. And he just kind of groans at me if I'm up and about. But if I'm not awake, he scooches me off the bed and he'll sit beside the bed and start barking and let me know.
Is he an alert dog or does he just...
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
He's a DAD, a diabetic alert dog.
Wow.
As I suck down my orange juice.
Yeah, take your time. Do you have like a straight arrow down or a diagonal arrow on your Dexcom? What are you saying?
It's a straight arrow.
Straight arrow.
It'll drop even more even after I get the juice on board.
Because the gastroparesis, you won't pick the juice up as quickly?
Correct. And I can always, what I typically do now that I've found works is I'll drink my juice and I'll open a little sugar packet and just absorb that through my
cheeks,
gums and cheeks, right? Even the gel tubes don't get on board as quickly as something like this does. So
how frequently do you have to do this?
Usually about daily. But I'm just too bold with insulin sometimes because when I see it, when I'm rising rapidly, I correct right away. And it kind of gives me that opportunity to have a low. So
if you get too aggressive at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have trouble, I guess, pre-bolusing because of the gastroparesis. You don't always know how quickly the food's going to get taken up.
Correct.
Yeah. Have you tried pre-bolusing some, but not all, and then putting in the rest as soon as you see the food hitting you?
That idea is very new to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard you on your podcast talk about that.
Yeah, because
I thought, that might be something worthwhile for me.
100%. So I'll talk for a second so you can take a break. But like the way I've said this before, but I had someone with gastroparesis contact me privately to try to talk through this idea. And I really didn't know what to say, obviously. And as we were talking about it, I thought the closest thing that I imagined to her situation and yours is the idea of a young person, a toddler, who people say, well, I can't pre-bolus because I don't know if they're going to eat or not. So I just changed that in my mind to I can't pre-bolus because I don't know if the food's going to be there or not, like working, hitting my blood sugar. And so what I always tell young people, parents of young people is I would put some in, pick an amount that feels safe. And then as soon as you see the rest of it hitting, like go ahead and put it in. And I don't know that that's not a great idea for you to try at least because maybe in some situations you'd notice, well, I don't need it right away. And it could end up being in a long amount of time, right? Before the food hits you. And then other days.
Right.
And
it depends on the type of food I'm consuming as well. Pizza versus, vegetables is going to absorb.
Is it consistent? Like or it depends on your system too.
Yeah, it does. It depends on the time of day and how much activity. And did I go for a walk or did I not? Mm-hmm. Am I packing up my car to go on a 1,700 mile trip? How many steps I'm taking, right?
Yeah.
And it's the day before. So the activity doesn't normally hit my body right away. Okay. I found that to be very interesting as well. And I'm, the gastroparesis has been happening since I was in my late 20s. Mm. It was diagnosed in my late 20s. I'm sitting back now because if I'm up, that's the problem with headphones. I tend to be active. I tend to get a little like, I need to pace or walk around. And I probably shouldn't because, my blood sugar's now at 61, but I don't believe it's entirely that low.
Do you want to test? Listen, to be perfectly honest, somebody having a low blood sugar on a podcast about type 1 diabetes is content. You're not wasting my time. So I'm sure right now people are like, I wonder what this lady's going to do. But do you want to test with a meter? We go ahead and do it.
No, I'm fine.
You sure?
Yeah, I don't. It's because of the interstitial fluids. If I'm leaning or tapping, or there's if I wear a tighter sleeve around the CGM, mm-hmm. I feel like it could possibly be that low, but I'm not, passed out or babbling. And
well, first of all, where do you usually pass out at? And secondly, do you want to give me your location so I can call 911 for you if you need me to?
No. Well, the dog has now blocked the door. He won't let me leave the room. He's like, yeah, I'm moving over here because,
So he wants you to stay still and handle yourself now.
Yeah.
Does he knows that you took in carbs?
Yes, and I you should see my PDM. You'd love this. What I did when I saw it, I moved to I'm not hungry. So for an hour, I won't be getting any insulin in a temp basal.
So you did a temp basal decrease like all the way down like 0% for an hour?
Yes.
Okay. Will that cause a high blood sugar later or not necessarily?
What I'll do is I'll cancel it eventually as I see the
your blood sugar
CGM start to come back up. Yeah. I look at it a lot because my work allows it. If I'm working a contract from home, I can, manage my diabetes better. Mm-hmm. If I'm out in the field doing inspections, it's a little more challenging because I'm more active, and it's just nice to have this. It's just a big help for my lifestyle.
Well, yeah. Well, someone like you who's had so much experience prior to this, just being able to basically flip a switch and shut off your basal insulin, it must be pretty exciting, honestly.
It really is. Yeah. It definitely is very exciting. I didn't, because I studied technology and I have a couple of degrees in it, but that doesn't mean anything because, data technology, and I saw it come into play and just become so dynamic so quickly, so rapidly. I knew I'm never going to be able to keep up with this at this point, you know. So I'm glad I have that education, but I'm more happy about it being available to treat diabetes type 1.
No, I agree. I think that it's pretty amazing how far we've come so quickly. And even though we talk about, 50 years as being your lifetime with diabetes, that seems like forever, and it really is for you personally. In the grand scheme of things, and the way technology moves, in the last decade, things have moved exponentially faster than they did maybe the 4 or 5 decades prior. We've gone farther, quicker, and it.
Absolutely,
yeah,
yes.
It seems to just be picking up. Hey, last night, 1:00 in the morning last night, I got up to let my dogs out. And as I'm coming back upstairs, I get a notification on my phone that, astronauts are about to enter the International Space Station. And I push a button, and 5 seconds later, I'm watching astronauts go from a spaceship into a space station on my cell phone while I'm walking up my stairs. And I'm in my late 40s, and I had a computer when I was 12 or 13, probably 13 or 14. I had one of the very first,
Apple IIes.
Oh, I got one. I had one from Radio Shack first. Then we had Commodore 64s, and so being a person who's been right there at computing from the very beginning, I'm still going to tell you that I still had a moment last night where I was stunned that I was looking down at a crystal clear screen watching astronauts float into the space station. I thought, my gosh, that is really an exceptional leap that we've made, that they can do that and that I can see it,
Yeah, especially because we're watching the after fact on Zenith black and white screen TVs. That was, one of the best TVs available,
we showed Arden saw an old console television the other day.
She's like, what is that?
Well, her first question was, why is the TV on the floor in this picture?
It's not mounted to the wall, right?
She's like, why is it on the floor? I'm like, it used to be part of furniture. And then
you did.
Yeah, then we found a piece of a picture where you could see inside of a console television from the top and the back, and she was just like, "What is all that?"
Cathode ray tubes, right?
There were tubes and big circuit. It was no circuit boards, tubes and all this stuff, and she and now our television is whisper thin, and I basically have a TV now that's just it's basically a piece of glass with a small computer attached to the back of it. I mean, honestly, that's kind of what it is, at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because the circuit boards are so paper thin, and they're made of, copper and aluminum, and, the circuit boards. I used to work after school for IBM. Okay. I worked for an independent contractor that we wired these, I forget what they're called now, but I would follow this. You had to be able to detect your colors. You needed to know what red, yellow, and blue were. Mm-hmm. And that was it. If you could do that, you could read the diagrams and follow the wiring and then switch it. And they were huge. Yeah. They were big. It was just an after school job. I made, $2.50 an hour. Right.
Yeah.
And this was, I would, rope these wires, this wax string together and send this diagram in multiple directions, and then add the connecting ends to it, and it would go to a different department after I did that. And my supervisor would come by and he says, I need 10 people just like you that can do this so that we can increase production. I said, look at what it's doing to my hands. He said, oh, we need gloves on you. And I said, yeah, something. So a friend of mine wanted to earn some extra money after school too. So I said, hey, Robin, you want to go check this job out? My supervisor's looking for, more help. She said, sure. So here we are, two of us girls, and the rest of them were men. And they're these, huge, big, gigantic, enormous guys working around us. And they're like, we can't keep up with these young women. They're doing a better job than we are. It was just for extra cash.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Well, extra cash at $2.50 an hour. You must have been rolling in it.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah.
Hey, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm still low, but it's not beeping anymore.
What does your Dexcom say?
I'm 49.
It says 49. So now are we at the point where we think if we test you're more like 60, or do you think you really are 49?
I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a finger stick.
Good. I'm here.
Just
do it.
You're not going anywhere.
No, where am I going?
Can I walk without falling down? You should see the look on the dog's face. So, are you crazy, Mama? Because when we're out walking, he'll tap me in the knee, right on the knee,
right,
and say, "Hey, this is not good."
You seem low to me, yeah.
If we're in the vehicle, he has a compartment in the back where he rides with his mat, and he's tethered in. It's like he'll start whining. And he'll pout at me and I'll see him in the rearview mirror, and I'm like, "Is it blood sugar?" And like, yeah, it is. You're right. And I'll pull over and treat, and I may have to take another pack of sugar in. But let's see what we got here.
That's the Contour Next One meter you have, right? If you have it, you got it with a dash?
Correct.
Yeah. It's a good meter. We're going to get a good number here. Let's see.
Yeah, it says I'm 73.
There you go.
So, that it's still I don't know if it's my skin or where I put my, the transmitter and the sensor.
Well, I would tell you that if you were dropping quickly, and I would expect this. So I expected you to be higher than the number on the CGM when you tested. So you're dropping quickly. You caught it with some fast acting sugar, which I think means that that the actual reading inside of your body is going to come up probably 5 or 10 minutes before the CGM can really figure it out, because it's all kind of happening so fast. I don't think you're putting your sensor in a bad place. I just think that CGM technology is a tiny bit behind real time. And you were speaking okay. Like, I didn't think you were 49 the way you were talking. I know you probably don't feel great because you're probably still feeling the low. You haven't gotten the benefit of it coming back up yet. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm stuttering.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Blah, 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 blah.
You're doing it. Listen, unless you listen back to this one day and end up saying, I never worked in a place where I worked with technology. I wonder where I came up with that story.
Oh, no, you're kidding. I grew up with an engineer from Ford Aerospace. Wow. My cousin, my cousin's dad, my cousin, my first cousin, my second cousin, my second cousin, my third cousin, second and third cousins. He was an engineer for Ford Aerospace. Wow. And then my stepfather was he worked for the skunk team at Department of Defense as an engineer. So he was a lot of fun. He and I got along great, but my brother and sister just did not like the guy. God rest his soul, but I understood him and I liked him, and we enjoyed some of the same things. Watching, television and DVDs and, he was brilliant.
That's nice. That's really
nice.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure you're feeling okay.
I feel
pretty
right. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not up running around. I'm sitting down and trying to behave myself so that.
So tell me a little bit about, let me ask you a couple of little interesting questions that are interesting to me. Can you tell me about how much you weigh and what your basal rate is?
Yeah, my basal rate is 13.2.
A day?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And I weigh about 110, 112 pounds. So I'm 5'3".
13 divided by 24. or are you getting 0.55 an hour?
Yes.
Yeah.
About that.
Gotcha.
0.55 an hour.
That sounds right.
That's my favorite basal.
That's your favorite
I'll
basal.
I'll kick it lower if I'm going to go out exercising, walking, or if I'm going to take the dog to the park.
Right.
You know.
And overnight, how do your graphs look overnight? Are they stable and lower?
They vacillate a little bit.
How about just stability? Is there, like, overnight, are you up and down, or are you in a straighter line?
I'm in a straighter line for the most part.
Yeah.
That's my trickiest moment, right before I get sick, like if I'm going to get the flu or if I'm going to get bronchitis, typically late winter, I come down with it on a pretty regular basis. I'll have a severe low the day or two before I get really sick.
Okay.
Which is a big indicator for
the
me.
Illness. Yeah, the illness is coming.
Right.
I think Arden has that same thing. If Arden gets like a head cold or, nothing like stomach related, but like a head cold or one of those things where you're functioning okay, but you don't feel well, she seems to need less insulin during those times as well. But it's interesting that you get like stubborn lows and then you see the illness a day or so later. That's interesting. Well, I'm just trying to understand, like, so you have a couple of different, challenges, obviously. One of them is the gastroparesis is I would think the biggest one. The idea of how do you stop spikes at meals if you don't know when the meals are going to impact you, or if they ever will, right? Or if it'll be hours and hours later. And then it sounds like during activity, you can drop pretty easily. Like those, do you think of those as your two biggest kind of hurdles with diabetes?
I do.
Yeah.
I was a swimmer. Imagine that.
I like that you're laughing at the idea that you were a swimmer.
they had to, I'd dive and we would practice in a 50-yard pool, a lot of flips, a lot of back and forth, 2 miles of exercise. Swimming, you're using every body muscle that you possess. Mm-hmm. And my favorite sport was water polo, because I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Mm-hmm. So, but competitively, I was, like on the D team, the slowest swimmer. I could do length. I could swim forever, but I couldn't compete because I wasn't fast. I wouldn't stay on the surface, because when you're swimming competitively, the idea is that you use the water to move through it at the level of the water. That's the idea. But there's a lot of resistance, if you're not swimming streamline. So, as is for most of us, you can't, teachers become instructors and teachers. If you can't do it, make it work for you, you become a teacher of the art. And that's how I figured it out, and I started working with exceptional children in the water to practice my art.
Yeah.
Because I'm better instructor of it than I am a swimmer of it. Because when you watch me demo it, it's like, hey, that's a butterfly stroke. It looks like you've been hit with a.
You sure you're not having a stroke, lady? Yeah. No. Well,
you're sure you're not having a stroke in the water.
I think you misspoke. You're not showing us a stroke. You're having a stroke. And well, listen, I wonder too, when you were younger with the higher blood sugars, if maybe you physically just weren't able to move as quickly as maybe you could have as well.
Very well could have been.
Yeah.
It's very well.
Isn't it fascinating?
Possible.
Isn't it fascinating that so many people, and you're just a good example of it right now, but who lived prior to this technology, and honestly, who live today without it, are I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how you would put it, but it sounds to me while I'm listening that your life was restricted in ways that probably after a while you didn't recognize were restrictions, but that you're physically and maybe mentally, because of like low blood sugars or high blood sugars, were being held back, and you didn't even really know, I guess. You're just doing the best you could with the information you had and the way things were done back then. Do you look back on it? Is it sad to look back on it, or are you just happy about where you are?
It's not sad. It's what I knew.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I think is probably the disadvantage is that my parents were not educated any differently either, right? Yeah. Growing up on military bases until I was 19 years old. And then, moving from that, well, yeah, because like I said, my father is basically the main parent. He was the main parent in my life for a very long time. And he let me drive the golf cart. That was always fun. I didn't play golf, but he would send me on the putting course. He'd say, my daughter's putting for me. He had a bad ankle, and so they were like, they loved it. They loved that, I could putt, mm-hmm. and I was pretty daggone good at it. Nice. So, it was like, okay, you're up, and I would just strut out there with his putter, and I would make the putt, and they would be standing over on the sidelines making their bets.
Mm-hmm. About whether or not you sink a putt?
Yes. He would say, I don't know if she sees that roll. I don't think she sees that turf the way I'm seeing it, because I'm at a different visual advantage. And he would cue me in a little bit. He said, you win, you sink this putt, and, you can have anything at the clubhouse you want.
I would take the money from that. I would have said, look, if I sink this putt, I'm taking half this money you win. How's that sound?
Money was never money. My sister was driven by money. Mm-hmm. I've never been driven by it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You got it. You don't. It's it's never been a force for me.
Yeah.
Because if the more I have, the more I spend. Any of us, right?
I don't know. I like to try to save some money.
Anybody can make money. It's keeping it.
Yeah.
Investing it properly. That's the ticket. That's the hard thing to do.
Yeah. Not spending it is the thing they don't tell you that you have to teach yourself. It's funny. We were just talking to my son the other day, and he asked if he wanted to try investing money a little bit. He had, a couple of his friends are doing it, and he wanted to try as well. And so for Christmas, he asked for a little bit of money that he could, like, instead of a Christmas present, he's like, can I just have some cash? I want to try this thing. And so he and I were talking about it, and I told him, I was like, when you were little, people would give you money for your birthday or for Christmas, and you were our first kid, and, mom's first reaction was, well, we'll put it in the bank for him. And I said, let's let him keep some of it. And like, we can put some in the bank. I said, but, we'll teach him how to put some aside. I was like, but let's let him have it, because I found my concept is that giving a kid $20 or $40 or sometimes, $50 that come in a birthday card, and giving them the ability to spend it, so that he could see what happens to the money once it's gone. Like, let him experience having it, right? And then suddenly not having it, and then seeing that, I have this thing now, and then realizing 3 weeks later, I don't even know where that thing is, or I'm not as interested in it as I thought I was, but the money's gone now. And if I would have held on to this 50 and put it to this 50 and this 50 and on, I could have actually gotten something substantial. So we sort of use that money as a teaching tool, almost imagining that maybe it'll be $1,000 over their childhood, right? And they'll probably lose it. It'll probably be gone, but that the lesson will be more valuable than the money. And I have to say, both of my kids are very good with money. Like, even if you take Arden shopping for clothing and she picks out a couple of items, you'll see at the very end of the shopping trip, she looks at it again and she puts some of it back. It's just very like, you know what? I picked these 3 things that I like, but as I'm living with them here and wandering around, I realize I just want this one thing. She'll put the other 2 back. It worked out. Like, I should knock on something because it worked out really well. Letting them use it ended up being more valuable than making them save it, because they wouldn't have known what they were saving it for,
What I did the same thing with my kids that my dad did with me.
Yeah.
It was like, you come up with 50% of the cost of the item that you want, and I'll put in the other 50%.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. When my son left,
whether it was clothes, cars,
no matter what,
books, cameras, it didn't matter. It was like, here's how it works with me. And I still like that principle because it taught me how to manage money.
Yeah. No, we did that when Cole was leaving, like the middle school age, 13, 14, he was heading into high school, and his hands were getting bigger. And he said, my hand's not going to fit in my baseball glove much longer. And he wanted to get a new outfielder's glove and a new infielder's glove, but they were very expensive. And he's like, I can just get a cheaper one. I can afford the cheaper ones. He's like, but I want to get a good one and use it all through high school. Maybe I could even have it for college. So I said, okay, look, you pay for half and I'll pay for half and we'll get you good gloves. And an infielder's glove that he got when he was 15 years old, maybe 14 years old, he still wears while he's pitching in college. And it still holds up for him because and now he sees, I spent a little extra money. I got something of a higher quality, and look, 6 years later, I still have it.
Oh yeah. I'm all about the quality. Forget the quantity. Yeah. Give me the quality over the quantity any day. I'd rather, hold out and get, this item, pay a little more for it because I know it's going to last.
Yeah. No, I call that the dollar store theory. I would rather have one $500 item than 500 $1 items.
Yes,
give me one
absolutely.
Good thing that I can really sink my teeth into. So how are we doing with your blood sugar? What's going on now? I hear rappers.
I'm having a Welch's fruit snack because it's still not great.
So the CGM still reads lower?
Yeah, it went down and then it was weird because, I was riding at 49. Now it's leveling off at 44. It went from 49 to 42 and now it's, yeah.
Now, do you feel low or do you feel?
I'm a little shaky, but I know that it's going to come back up because I've treated it. It's just with the gastrial paresis, it can take me an hour to come back up to like 93 and then ride out at 93 to 102 for a while.
Right. Wow. Yeah. It's, and I'm not asking you to do it again, but do you think if you did a finger stick again, you'd be lower than the 70 some that we got the last time?
No, we can check it. I don't mind testing it.
Well, for the podcast.
No, just for you, Scotty.
Right, for me, basically.
I call you Scotty. I like Scotty.
You do refer to me as Scotty in your private life, even though we never
I do, yeah. I listen to Scotty, and they're like, "Who? You talking Star Trek or what?"
Hey, I got to be honest with you, Grace. It's way better than that asshole. I'm taking that.
Well, a friend of mine, I used to hang out in this group of people, but she's still my friend. Her son was diagnosed at the age of 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he's camping out with some friends over this one weekend. And all of a sudden I get this phone call. Can you come over? We need your help. We have Andrew for the weekend. His parents are out of town. And I'm like, well, don't panic. I'll be over in a few minutes. Don't panic.
They really didn't know what to do, huh?
Is he still breathing in and out?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dropped on it says it's now at 69. When we had it originally tested, it was 73.
So you bounced a little and you're leveling off, but drifting back again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could feel that enough that you knew to just have the fruit snacks.
Yeah. It's a danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah.
I went to Costco. So I got I think there's 90 packs. Yeah, there's 90 of Welch's fruit snacks. So I got
in that big box. You get that big box.
Yeah, that 40-pound box of fruit snacks.
Yeah, I think everybody listening knows that box of fruit snacks probably. Because when you buy them in the grocery store, you have to end up paying $10 for like 30 packs of them. It's a ripoff. I mean, it really is. It's not even food. It's just like whatever it is, you know. But it's interesting too because, you know, obviously the gastroparesis is at play because those things hit really quickly. I mean, those fruit snacks they're like
later in the day. If I'm out walking, yeah, they're going to get on board quicker because it might, you know, my body is heated up and I'm moving around and it's going to get into my system more quickly.
That's interesting.
That way.
Well, that's really interesting. Well, I have to be honest, this didn't go any way like I thought it was going to, and yet I find it really interesting, and I think people are going to enjoy listening to it.
I like you engaging with questions. Ask me anything that you really want.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I've you know, obviously I've been trying to go a little slower because you're doing what you're doing over there. But I guess my biggest thought is, what would you tell people who are diagnosed now with this technology, but don't want it, but can afford it? Like, would you say, like, if I put you in charge of the world, would everyone who has type 1 diabetes have this stuff?
Put me in charge of the world. Oh my goodness.
I'll give you the magic wand, Grace. You be in charge for a second.
Yeah, I would definitely strongly encourage them to consider it. I mean, now I'm well educated in your, you know, podcast, right? I was born with a visual problem. Okay. I've lived with it all my life. So it's nothing new. So I'm a very intent listener. When I listen to, you know, podcasts of all sorts, I retain that information much better than I would if I had read it.
Okay.
So I would suggest to them and strongly encourage anybody with, you know, type 1 diabetes, first of all, find a good endocrinologist and get a prescription for an insulin pump with a CGM. Just now I see advertising, and I don't have TV at home. I just I have a big screen and I play DVDs, but I don't subscribe to any internet. I have internet, but I don't watch cable TV.
Okay.
I've been watching internet TV for almost 10 years now.
Okay.
And so I've seen it here because of where I'm staying. There, the Libre is encouraging type 1 and type 2 people to try their device and giving them a free test drive of it. As it, you know, subscribe to it and test drive it and see if it works for you. You know, it doesn't matter what CGM, they're all about the same. They do, you know, every 5 minutes, they test, they give you a reading, you can swipe, you can use your phone, you can use your laptop, whatever technology there is, at least try that, you know, and then, you know, maybe an insulin pump would help you, because some people are so good at what they do on, you know, Lantus and in multiple, you know, injections daily that they would not benefit from it.
Oh, I agree. No, I know a number of people who are MDI that do have amazing outcomes and they're really on top of it. But having the technology, I was just wondering because you're a person who has not had it. Plus, you didn't even have insulin that worked well, nearly as well as the insulin you have now. I mean, honestly, Grace, if Novolog existed 50 years ago, you probably don't have gastroparesis right now. Don't you imagine and other nerve issues?
I would imagine, yeah, I would have had tighter control.
Right.
But I was very labile and brittle from the get-go. I was passed out in DKA for a very long time.
Wow.
When they finally got me diagnosed. I mean, it was that severe. My parents had taken me into the clinic 3 times. On the 4th time, I was just gone.
Yeah. Well, you've heard other people's diagnosis stories that are similar to yours, right? They go in, they think it's one thing, they think it's another thing. Nobody ever checks your blood sugar, and you get on.
Even to this day, when I had all the classic symptoms, but my symptoms were not all that classic. And here's an area that's questionable. Okay, and it happened with my friend's son too. He was 2 years old. I was 8 years old. Immediately following my vaccines, right?
Mm-hmm.
I became sick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. So vaccines have been linked to autism. They've been linked to other things. But changing, the government's idea of, is this a benefit or can it cause problems, right? How many people, and friends of mine, I get this phone call. This was in 2005. I get this phone call. Now, this man is a triathlete. He has 2 daughters that are very healthy and vibrant, and a wonderful wife, this family. And they get back from Germany. And I get this phone call. He's like, Grace, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. I said, what's going on? Because he was originally talking to my husband, and my husband hands me the phone, and he says, Tim wants to talk to you. So he hands me the phone. I said, Tim, what's going on? Because I was, I'm in the kitchen, and we're in the motorhome, and I'm cooking up whatever I'm cooking up. And I could overhear the conversation because it's not a very large space anyway, and I'm nosy. I admit it. So I said, what's going on? He says, I've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I thought, no, you don't have type 2 diabetes. I said, that's impossible, right? I said, I doubt very seriously it's type 2. They're misdiagnosing you. Well, they put me on insulin. They put me in the hospital in Germany. I was at the base. They put me in the hospital. They gave me insulin to bring my blood sugar down. And now they've got me on metformin. And I don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's an athlete.
Yeah.
He was in the Army, and now he's, a contractor with the Department of Defense, or it's just a gang of people that we know and we hung out with. And I said, Tim, make an appointment with an endocrinologist and ask them to do a C-peptide serum on you right away. Please. He says, what is that called? So Denise, write this down. She's got so there's this 4-way conversation going on. C-peptide serum will determine what is actually going on with you. And the next day I get a phone call. He says, yeah, I have type 1 diabetes. Within 30 days, both daughters were diagnosed.
Really?
With type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
Very active, young family.
Yeah.
The youngest one was first, and then and I was shocked. So I'm on this flight, and I'm coming back. I think I was I'm coming back from being somewhere, and it's hard to say. I've done a lot of travel. And I ended up having a conversation with a service member. And we just engage in type 1 diabetes conversation, he says, yeah, he says, we're finding out, because I've known several people that have been given 100% disability while in the military when they become type 1 diabetic, right? Because they're not accepting the responsibility of it, but it's suspected that certain vaccines can wipe out the islets of Langerhans, which make the insulin for your body.
So you think these are vaccines that they're giving the military members? Maybe
yes,
for being overseas and stuff like that?
Correct.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting, but there's also vaccines that we get as children that may be causing it.
Yeah, and so I don't know, obviously I don't know anything, but I wonder if it's the vaccine causing something, or if it's the idea that you're getting vaccines that are causing your body to mount an immune response suddenly to something. And then a lot of doctors' offices like to give multiple vaccines at the same time. And I wonder how taxing that is on your system, to give it all these different, things that it has to mount an immune response to. And if it doesn't take people who already have the markers for type 1 diabetes and throw them over the edge. It's all very interesting and worth
What
knowing.
Are markers? See, that's something I'm unfamiliar with. Who already has these markers and what are they?
Yeah.
I've heard that used, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah. There's is it going to run out of my head? What? People are laughing at me now. They've been on the show a number of times. It's a really common set of words, and I'm just flaking out on.
Well, it has to do with the endocrine system.
It's something.
Is that what?
Yeah. Well, so there's this thing called TrialNet, right? And TrialNet can, obviously I'm not a doctor, but they take a blood sample and they can tell you if you have certain markers that indicate that you're more likely to get type 1 diabetes. And I think there's five of them if I'm getting this right. And, the more you have, I think the more likely it is that you're going to get type 1 at some point. And then then it's up to whatever. Like you'll hear some people will, I got inoculated for something and then I got type 1 a little while later, or I got really sick and then I got type 1 later. My daughter got Coxsackie virus, and then we noticed like a month or two later it seemed like she had it again. And Coxsackie is not something that should return. So the possibility exists is that she never really got rid of it, because when she got Coxsackie, maybe her immune system just, ran full steam at her pancreas instead of at the Coxsackie virus. I have no idea. But I think obviously Arden had genetic markers that made her more likely to have type 1 diabetes. And this Coxsackie, firestorm kind of threw her over the edge. So I don't know. I think the way you said it, it's like there's something in the vaccine that makes type 1 diabetes. I don't think that's the generally understood medical idea. I think the medical idea is that your immune system mounts a response, and then you have these markers already, and it goes after, like you said, your pancreas instead of the thing it's supposed to be taking care of. But again, that's a layperson's understanding of it at best. I'm, not nearly an expert on it. But it's still fascinating, that can happen like that.
Yeah, you sound proactively protective. In other words, that's really a compliment. It's supposed to be. I'm heating up some hot water so that I can help get this food on board, because my blood sugar is still not really. Well,
Grace, listen, yet. We've been at this longer than I expected to be. So I'd like to let me let you go, and so you can manage yourself and get yourself together, and you don't have to be worried about me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do appreciate your time and taking the time to work with me and interview. I like the stimuli of the questions.
Good.
I just, what the idea of the markers, see, that's new to me. And although there's another word that is at both our tips of our tongues that we're not able to come up with at the moment, which is fine. It's just interesting to me because how did, a father and two daughters end up? Because obviously they had to have something in their system, but they had gotten these vaccines, inoculations prior to going overseas.
Yeah, no, I fully believe that could be the thing that fast forwarded the whole thing. You should check it out. It's trialnet.org. They explain very clearly there what they do and what they're testing for and trying to detect.
Sounds familiar. Yeah. I don't fit any of the, there's plenty of drug testing trials out there, but when I read all the, qualifications, can you be on this drug trial or this trial or that trial, I don't fit the qualifications for some reason.
Yeah. No, this is like risk screening, monitoring, and prevention studies, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, check it out sometime. But I want you to take care of yourself first. So I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you powering through a low blood sugar and letting everybody kind of see it happen. I think it was pretty fascinating. So, but I'm going to let you go so that you can get yourself back to where you want to be.
I appreciate that. And well, I don't know if you'll actually produce this or not, but hey, everybody out there, if I can live through it the way I've lived through it, the dinosaur ages for type 1 diabetes have changed incredibly over the years.
Grace, do you think I'm not going to let people hear this? Are you out of your mind? This is
I know
terrific.
You get to. you have to edit it to some extent,
Do you
or
think
not.
so? I don't know. I'm not editing this. This was amazing. You were 49 and taking care of yourself with gastroparesis while we were being recorded. I think it's fascinating. I think it'll be. Well,
I'm at 65. I'm doing. It's coming up slowly. It just takes a while for. I was actually surprised. I didn't think that I would drop again.
Hold like that lower. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you go ahead and take care of yourself, and I will send you you one day you'll turn your podcast player on and you'll be on there.
Yeah, could happen. All right, Scott. Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, you too, hon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I'd also like to thank the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. Find out more and get started at dexcom.com/juicebox. And of course, a huge thank you to Grace for sharing this very personal look into her life with type 1 diabetes. If you'd like to interact with other listeners, you can do that at the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook page, now up to 12,000 members. It's completely free. Just come on in, Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. There's a couple of quick questions to answer to make sure you're a real person. And then after that, you'll be chatting with other listeners just like you. Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. You can actually find the show also on Instagram at Juicebox Podcast. And if you'd like to support the show, that is completely simple and easy for you to do. Just leave a great review wherever you listen, share the show with someone who you think will enjoy it, and subscribe wherever you listen. Hit subscribe or follow in your podcast player. It's a huge, huge difference maker for the podcast. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.